Computer. Yo, Ryan, what's good, man?
What's going on, Miz? How you doing? You all right?
Yeah. Back for another Q&A. Guys, I'm gonna skip the intros, just because I know none of you are really here to hear our life stories. You probably just want to know the information that I very tastily put in the very clickable thumbnail.
Is that not
Um,
what this is about? I thought this was about me. Well,
oh
what's
no,
this?
no,
I thought this was my
not
life
not.
story.
I've lured you in with this. Yeah, man.
Oh man.
We got
Oh,
all your
okay.
family and friends together. We're gonna talk about
I'm
your
not
life
gonna.
story.
I'm
No,
not
no,
gonna be able
no.
to talk to about myself. That's
We're
a shame.
gonna get into the meat of things. We're gonna get into the meat of things. Um, but yeah, Q&A, confessions of a personal trainer. So just an opportunity for anybody out there who maybe doesn't have access to us, to get a little bit of access to us and help you answer some questions and find some guidance in your own training, nutrition, all that other kind of stuff. So I will kick off with the first question. So I got a question from this is actually not on one of my clients. This is a from a previous Q&A episode. Is somebody commented. I don't actually, you know what, it's so bad. I should have made a note of what episode it was and what we were talking about. Um, I'll probably add it into the show notes. But a gentleman commented and basically asked, how much body fat is too much body fat when bulking? And honestly, I thought that wasn't a bad question because I think we've all maybe wondered that at some point in time, and there's going to be a whole load of variants or variables as to why people gain body fat or not. But in that specific context of people wanting to build muscle, and loads of us are, and the old school, like, yeah, you got to eat big, you got to eat big to get big, that kind of thing. And but how much should somebody like really, how far should somebody really take that? And I've certainly got my opinions on it, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on, how fat somebody should get
Mm.
when bulking.
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I think everybody who starts their training career, let's say, or tries to build muscle, is under the impression that the more weight you gain, the more muscle you build. But that certainly is not the case, and you was right to put it in the context of building muscle, because that's kind of where we need to start first, because if your goal is to build muscle, you have to ask yourself when the point of putting on too much body fat absolutely like contradicts that kind of aspect of you building muscle. So for you to build muscle, you need to be healthy. Ideally, the healthier you are, the more muscle you're going to be able to build. You need to be able to recover well, train properly, and so when it comes to bulking, it's going to be different from everybody, but you need to ask yourself when you're starting to see a negative impact from putting on too much body fat. So again, everybody's made this mistake, but when you are putting on too much body fat, some of the typical things that we see with people who are getting to an unhealthy stage or they're putting on too much body fat is that their digestion is going first and foremost. This is something which I struggled with a lot when I was bulking. My digestion just went to shit, and it's kind of one of those things where you just ignore it. If the scale weight is moving up, you think things are moving in the right direction, and I'm sure things can still be you can still be building muscle. However, your digestion is kind of it's a massive role on your ability to digest food and help you build muscle. So that's a prime example of why putting on too much body fat or gaining too much weight will impact your digestion, which will counteract the intention of adding more food into your diet and in the aim to build muscle. So there's one thing there, digestion. And even with that, there's kind of like a host of other things which happen as well. So if you're not digesting your food properly, then that's going to impact your recovery because you're not able to, like I said, digest the proteins, digest the nutrients, which are key to helping you build muscle. Other impacts of gaining too much body fat is inflammation, which again doesn't really put your body in the best possible position to just be healthy in general. So those are my kind of two main points where I'd look to stop gaining body fat. Now that's going to be different from like in between loads of people. Like everybody's going to have their different like set points where these negatives things happen. I've seen when it comes to coaches, they have variants of different clients, and some clients put on more body fat and they're able to build muscle. Some people are generally better building muscle when they're at a leaner stage. So um, I wouldn't say it's directly correlated to the amount of body fat, but it's more so directly correlated to the amount of negatives that come with putting on that body fat. So I don't, it's one of those answers where you can't give a distinct, I'd say 15% or 20% body fat because it really does depend on each person. So I think it's more a case of mitigating the negatives that come with that body fat and seeing where that is for you. What do you think, Ms.?
Yeah, I mean, to sort of to touch on what you're talking about there, um, your ability to digest food and to a further extent, and this doesn't get talked about enough, I don't feel, is your ability to absorb those nutrients. And there is a distinction, between digestion and absorption. So you might be consuming food, you might be digesting it, uh, but how much of that you're absorbing nutrients from, it can be determined by the quality of food that you're eating. So if your idea is to basically eat Five Guys every day because it's going to give you an extra 1,000 calories. And for anybody that doesn't know what Five Guys is, which I'm sure everybody does, but it's a burger place where they give you like a tremendous amount of unnecessary extra fries
Yeah.
that you can never finish. But yeah, you're
Mhm.
not necessarily going to absorb as much from that meal as you would from let's say a salmon with some vegetables and some rice or sweet potato or something like that, right? So
Yes.
having your sort of excess calories come from more nutrient dense whole food sources, you're going to be increasing the likelihood that you're actually absorbing that nutrition and then, actually getting the muscle building nutrients like protein and calcium from it. And on top of that, you were talking about recovery there. Yeah, nutrients and nutrition are a key component of us recovering from the stress that we put ourselves through in training. And again, you're more likely to get that nutrition from nutrient dense whole foods than you are from Five Guys and Ben and Jerry's. So
Yeah.
whilst Five Guys and Ben and Jerry's are definitely giving you a lot more uh, calorie intake and you're gaining like additional mass, which is going to predominantly be fat mass, you might not necessarily be gaining any muscle. So that's a really good point that you made there around that. And I think that's definitely a solid consideration people definitely should have. In terms of saying, the question, I guess, is how much, because in your own individual context, you might be looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, I'm not really seeing any abs here. My stomach is starting to bulge out of my waist a tiny little bit. And I do think that there are some maybe simple visual cues that people can look at and be like, whilst BMI is is used as a health marker, and we all now maybe have heard that it's not a complete measure of our health. And so another thing that we look at is our hip and waist measurements,
Mm.
because they indicate that if we store a greater amount of body fat, especially around the waist, you do have an increased risk of diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. And so if your waist size is starting to like bulge out significantly, um, that might be an indication that you've gone a bit too far with it. And again, I'm not giving anything specific there because there is, person to person, we all vary in size, and how much body fat we're gonna store is partially genetically predetermined as well. And it's a hard question because some of us are gonna find it easier to stay leaner when bulking, and some of us are gonna like find it much harder. And I know I'm in the middle. I don't get excessively overweight, but I'm also not somebody that is naturally just lean year round. Whereas there are some people, unfortunately, um, they can kind of be in excess calories and they still stay fairly lean year round, and it's like, good for them, but they do tend to be outliers.
Mm.
And unfortunately, because of genetics, you are going to get some people who are just more predisposed to being overweight, have a greater risk of obesity and these kind of things. So, whilst muscle building is a super great goal to have, it's a healthy thing to do. And of course, most people that are doing it are most likely doing it for, aesthetics and gains.
Yes.
Um, you very rightly pointed out, I think health is the foundation, and that's probably the first thing that you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about, am I gaining too much body fat? Versus what I think most people are actually thinking about, which is, am I gaining too much body fat to be aesthetic? I think that's pretty fair with people wanting to gain some muscle. Probably some good points there in terms of what they should consider when looking to, manage their body fat levels. And hopefully for anyone listening out there, that's giving you a little bit more insight into what you should look out for. All right, Ryan, what you got for me?
Questions wise?
Yeah.
Okay, regarding the same subject, yeah?
And anything you want, a question that your client asked you, a question that you've come across, or
Yeah, sure. So this is kind of in line with this is the question I had had for you last time, but it is, what is a good rate of loss, or how quickly should I be losing my body fat or weight?
I will give a very straightforward answer to that,
Yep.
and then I'll expand on it. On average, I would say half a kilo a week, you're probably doing pretty well on average. And when we say on average, we mean that it doesn't mean that every time you weigh yourself that, for the week that you're going to see half a kilo down. It just means that after 6 weeks and 6 readings of your weight, we can see on average, you'll have lost 3 kilos, which would have been on average half a kilo a week. And that's probably, from my experience, a good amount of weight loss to have occurred without you having lost any significant amount of muscle mass. And so we're just talking about a very average person there, not somebody who's like significantly overweight or in the obese category. And we're not talking about people that are like maybe very lean either. But definitely more, if I then caveat into very overweight and obese, we can certainly say a greater number of, like, if you're losing 1 kilo a week or even 2 kilos a week or whatever, because there's such a high point to drop down from, that's actually quite helpful. What we've seen in some research is that the quicker the drop at the beginning with overweight and obese patients, the more motivated they were to continue pushing forward because they had that initial incentive of the strategies working.
Yeah.
if you're just a regular person looking to get in shape for the summer, and you're not exactly like, you're just like an average level of body fat, which I don't know, for men is maybe somewhere between 15 to 20%, um, or a little bit more maybe than 20%. Um, and women, do you know what? I'll be honest with you, I never remember women's ones because I'm not a woman. I know it's just higher. So if you're a woman, and hopefully you've got a rough idea of what an average level of body fat percentage is for you. If you're one of those individuals, then yeah, half a kilo a week on average. And I have a weird way of calculating it that's not like very textbook. It's just based on my own experience. And the way I calculate the rate of weight loss for a person, if I'm helping them lose weight, is I kind of take an it's easier when I'm doing it on my calculator, it's not off the top of my head. But I kind of take an additional percentage of weight that's going to be like water and muscle that's going to get lost a little bit. And then I say, okay, well, whatever's remaining probably came from body fat. So if somebody needs to go from 20% body fat to 10% body fat, likely I'm going to calculate that their total weight loss needs to be around about 15% of their total weight. So there's just an extra 5% that we're accounting for to ensure that the actual weight lost, the actual 10% lost was actually 10% of body fat. And so that's how I've always kind of worked it. And so if you're an 80 kilogram individual and you need to lose 10% of your body fat, that would be 8 kilos. An extra 5% would be 4. So your total weight loss is going to be 12 kilos. And
Mm.
12 kilos at an average of half a kilo of weight a week. That's going to be 24 weeks, which is a pretty long time. And realistically, not that we're going to delve into this too much, but strategically, we're doing that in two separate cuts rather than one singular one. So a lot of time and planning would need to go into that situation. But yeah, that was, I think I answered that question there.
You did very well as
Thank
well.
you. What's your take on it?
Um, you bring up a really good point when you say, again, it depends on the context. Who are you working with? What's their personality like? Because at the end of the day, if you get towards the goal, if you get to the goal, then any rate of loss which you're comfortable with is going to be okay. I'm not here to tell you what's good and what's bad. Um, I would say, again, the situation that you brought up with people who see that bigger drop in the first couple of weeks, that gives them a kind of motivation and a drive and gains momentum enough to kind of help them stick to the plan more to gain more momentum. And I think that's the benefit of going for a faster rate of loss or just seeing those bigger changes at the start. I know that when it comes to certain personality types, uh, people who are more driven, people who want to see bigger changes, they are comfortable with making bigger changes to their protocol. So bigger drops in their nutrition, more cardio, more steps. And they love seeing those quick wins in the form of big weight drops. And that allows them to have more motivation, get more momentum, and push through the difficult times that come with faster rates of loss. Um, but like at the same time, if you're somebody who is not necessarily comfortable with making massive changes to your lifestyle in order to see big changes, then like as long as you get to the end goal, then you're more than happy to take a slower one as well. So it's person dependent.
All right, man.
Mhm.
I don't know, everything one of these you can like literally unpack into multiple smaller tangents, but that's generally more suited to the ask hole, which I don't know, I've
Yeah.
talked about in a previous episode. But for anybody who's maybe just like trying to get on with it, you only we ever really need small amounts of information. And if you do want to know a little bit more detail, or you want to unpack anything, feel free to comment in the comments below, comment section below, or you can reach out to Ryan. I'll leave his Instagram for you to DM him and then ask him any further questions if you want to, and any of that stuff. But yeah, feel free to engage with us in the comments as well, guys. And thank you for watching so far. Ryan, thank you for coming on. We'll have Ryan back
Thank you, Miss.
again soon to tackle more questions and anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, thanks for having me on. See you next
Awesome.
time.
Cool. Peace.